Hi, everyone. This is about playtesting for UEFN. I'm hoping to go over like an introduction to how playtesting works and hopefully give you some tips on how you should conduct playtests for your games. Tell you a little bit about myself. I'm Brad. I've been making games for a long time. The first half of my career, I was a traditional game designer and artist, working on a variety of genres. The second half of my career, I stumbled into the user-generated content space where I fell in love with making highly accessible tools. I really fell in love with the challenge of, like what's better than making a game, making all the games, and making it really easy and accessible for all of you to make what's in your heads. I started at Epic in December, working on UEFN as a product designer, and really excited to be here so far. Some of my features should be releasing pretty soon. Okay, so let's talk about what playtesting is before we talk about how to conduct one. So this is a common development pitfall. Maybe this will be feel familiar to you. You make an island, you think it's great, you're really excited, your team is excited, you publish it, okay? You publish it, and then players aren't engaging and retaining. Why? Why don't they like the thing? Why don't they see what I see? What do I do about it? Well, did you playtest? If you playtested, you would know before you publish how your players are gonna feel about it. And they're a lot more likely to love your game. So playtesting is a game industry term. It's used for collecting data from within your team, but also your prospective players. It's a vital part of game development that helps you confirm or deny your assumptions, what you think players are gonna like or not like. It's gonna confirm whether your players know what to do, where to go, if they like what they're seeing in your game. So it'll help you find the fun, and it's gonna aid your iteration to make sure that you're working on the things that are gonna matter most to your player base. So we playtest because we want to know our blind spots. You know your game's the best. You know how things should work, how they shouldn't work. You have an idea of what you think is fun. This is gonna confirm or deny for you whether your players see things the way you do. It's gonna make sure that they know what to do, where to go, and that they like the things that you're presenting to them. It's gonna make you a better game designer too, because over many playtests, you're gonna gain an understanding and an anticipation of what your players are responding positively to. So I kind of presented on the previous slides about my background. Like I've worked on a few UGC platforms, user-generated content platforms, and I was struck by a story in one of the first ones that I worked on where a brand new creator joined the platform, spent months making his very first game, and shared it, and it didn't do well. He published it, and he was so distraught, like, what did I do wrong? Like, why isn't anybody liking my game? So this creator took it upon themselves. They posted on the forums. They said, hey, this is my first game. I poured weeks, months into this, and I just don't get it. I don't understand. And this is one of the things I love about UGC platforms is that the community, you're all creators yourselves. You sympathize with this player's story. And they were willing to play the game and give him feedback. They said it was too hard. They said the game was like way too fast and they had a hard time responding to what was going on. They said the mechanics were difficult to understand. This playtester, or this creator took that feedback to heart, made changes to their game. Now, the story of like this loop was great, but what struck me in that moment was that this creator was completely blind to how others would perceive their game. And so that's what playtesting is all about. It's an opportunity, not an obligation, but an opportunity for you all to get in front of what your players are gonna think about what you're doing. Okay, So now that we've sort of established what and why, let's talk about some of the logistics of setting up a playtest. You're going to want to playtest as early as you can. You're going to want to playtest, professional developers, they start playtesting on the earliest of prototypes when they just have white boxes and simple gameplay. Avoid adding a ton of polish to your mechanics in the early phases. You might just be polishing areas that you're just going to throw away. So make sure that you're playtesting as soon as you have things online, as soon as new features come online. You're going to continue to playtest throughout development. And each time you playtest, you're going to learn something. You're going to iterate on that, and then you're going to playtest it again. So this is a cyclical cycle as long as you're developing and maintaining your game. So you can playtest any part of your game. You can playtest a basic mechanic. You can playtest a level. You can playtest an enemy or a boss. Sometimes you will build content specifically to throw away that you're not planning to ship it. You might have an enemy you drop into your scene, and you're going to make a small little battle arena just to play test whether that enemy is fun or not. That's okay. Have theories about what you're play testing. So, it might be, the players are going to like this enemy that I built, this boss encounter that I built. Maybe it's going to be a first-time user experience where I expect brand new players to be able to get from point A to point B without any additional help from me during the playtest, and then measure against whether you were successful or not. There's an example that I have of I was working on a space dogfighting game, and there was a missile, and I was getting a lot of feedback from my team that the missiles needed to be a lot stronger. They needed to basically be one shot, one kill. But this was a dogfighting game, and I was really worried that if the missiles just killed the other ships in one hit, there would be no dogfighting. People would just fly around and lock on their missiles and fire them. Boom. But the feedback was pretty overwhelming. So I felt like this was something I needed to playtest because, if the team's telling me that, this, I need to try it out at least. So we did a playtest. I cranked the missile damage up crazy high. And my theory was that dogfighting was going to be diminished. We held the playtest. That was the feedback we got. It was pretty clear. People saw that the ships that had the missiles on them were a lot more successful. The ships that weren't. What was great was I was able to confirm that theory. I was able to align the team that, hey, that wasn't the right direction. We were able to check a box and move on. So, you can play test any part. You can play test a small part like missile damage. Or you can play test bigger parts like levels, whole levels or boss encounters or new mechanics. How many playtesters do you need? So I've worked at a bunch of companies with a bunch of different research teams, and the general consensus is that to get opinionated subjective feedback, oftentimes called qualitative research, you can look online if you want to learn more about this. You don't need very many playtesters to get good data about how people are going to perceive it. 5 to 6 players is going to give you about 80% certainty that the feedback you're getting is completely actionable and valid. More than 15 is definitely diminishing returns. You're going way overkill on that. So you can keep your playtest numbers low, which helps you organize and make effective playtests. 8 is a great sweet spot. That's generally, in my experience, working with researchers, what we've targeted is around 8 playtesters. But if you can't get even 5, getting any data is better than no data. Seeking different opinions. You're going to want, you guys know your experience the best, and you're looking for blind spots. So new players, players who've never played your experience are going to be the best because they're going to give you a fresh perspective about what you're delivering. Returning players, still valuable, right? Because there's times where you might be playtesting an endgame experience, and you don't want a brand new player who hasn't built up skills and mastery of your game. So think about the kind of thing you're testing and match the playtesters to that experience. Be really careful, family and friends. You want folks who are going to give you honest feedback. So even if you grab family and friends, make sure they know that, hey, it doesn't help me if you hold back. I need you to be honest with me. And even if it's rough feedback, I need to hear it, because it's way better to get that feedback during playtests than it is once you've shipped your game. Okay, so there's going to be times where maybe you've exceeded all the folks you know. How do you get additional playtesters? Well, here's a few links. You can go to the Epic forums. You can go to Discord, Instagram. You can go to Twitter. Definitely reach out. Like, build a pool of playtesters. If you keep a list of all the people who've been willing to playtest your game, you can refer to them later as you make additional games. And you can, if you have that list, if you need, like, I've already playtested this person with this part of my game, you can use them again for other parts of your game. Also, reach out to other developers. Offer to trade your time. Like, hey, I'll playtest your game if you playtest mine. Like, that's a great way of building up a playtest pool. Okay, so some logistics about the best ways of playtesting. You're going to, ideally, you're in person. They're sitting down at your machine. You can see their face. You can see their body language. And you can talk to them in real time. Like, that's the best. But that's not necessarily going to be realistic because of location and time zones and whatnot. So you can do remote if you can get on a Zoom call with them. So you can, again, ask them to share their camera so you can see how they're feeling, what their body language is. That's going to be just fine. If you can get into the game with them and you can spectate them, then you can watch what they're doing, right, while they're doing it. Or they can just share their screen on the Zoom call too. Asynchronous playtesting is also okay. It's not as good as being able to observe them in real time and being able to have that instant feedback and that instant dialogue to be able to hear what they're saying and to ask them to clarify. But you can, if you're going to do asynchronous, make sure that you give them really great instructions. Make sure you test everything, and then ask them for their written feedback afterwards. Make sure when you're playtesting, you're not in the game playing with them. You're there you need to be observing. And if you're observing, then you're able to get the insights you need. If you're playing, you're distracted by playing the game, and you might miss something. Recording the game session is also a really great tip. I don't know how many times I've been involved in a playtest and been able to pull video later and see what was going on and find the insight I needed to make the right tweak. And recording these play sessions is great because you can use it for promo material as well. Replays is also an option. As a reminder, you can go into the game settings, ask them to turn on their replays and share those replay files with you. Also another great way of building promo material. Consider multiplayer versus single player. So there's going to be times where you're building a multiplayer experience. Maybe it's a team deathmatch or something, and you need players in your game, multiple players in your game. So that's going to be a challenge where, I think I heard before the show, like lots of folks talking over each other during the game. If you can, partner up some of your team members with a smaller group of playtesters so that you can get those insights from the different groups, because it's really hard to track a bunch of people all talking over each other at the same time. Also consider in a multiplayer playtest, like there might be a scenario where you're trying to test first-time user experience, like new players, and if you mix new players and old players together, the older players may influence the behavior of the new players and maybe not. You may not be getting the data you want, whether new players are figuring out things on their own or if they're just getting help from others. If you have your team playing in the playtest, like you need to fill out the ranks to make a multiplayer game work, make sure your team members are playing appropriately. It's not going to do you any good if your team members are completely obliterating a bunch of new players in your game. And it's okay if maybe you're getting a bunch of returning playtesters in your game, and you're wanting to test like how players who've played repeatedly, who've mastered the game some, they can play up to that skill level. So think about that when you're putting playtests together. Okay, so some more about logistics. Make sure everything is ready to go. Make sure that your island code is in place. Do a mic check that your game plays with the instructions that you've given. You can playtest your playtest instructions. Send it to somebody and say, hey, can you run through this before my playtest to make sure everything's right? You don't want to waste your volunteers' time by giving them instructions, and then they have to reach out to you, or you have to spend 20 minutes setting up their machine in the right way, or maybe you gave them the wrong island code or whatever, and you have to figure that out. So respect your time, respect their time, make the most of what you can do there. There's with remote and asynchronous playtests, there's a new tool that just shipped on Monday. It's a new playtest feature on the Creator Portal. I don't know if you guys saw it yet, but let me show you how that works. So this is your project on the Creator Portal, and there's a new tab there called Playtests. And a project can have one playtest running, and so you can click this button here to create a playtest now, and when you do so, you get this screen. And on this screen, you get a playtest code that you can send your playtesters, and you can define what version you want that playtest to be running. So between playtests, you can update your game and change your version so that you can be trying A/B testing or whatever you need to do to get to prove your theories, prove or disprove your theories. So just a note, like if you need to be an administrator to the project, or you need to be the owner of the project to be able to set this up. And you can also then manage the playtest group. So when you click on this, the playtest group is associated with the team that the project is a part of. So you can have up to 50 players here, and those players need to be 18 and older. This playtests are not moderated, and so the limit of 50 plus the age restriction is to make sure people aren't trying to bypass the moderation system. Okay, so the other thing to consider in the logistics front is think about like all of the different ways people can play Fortnite today. You can play it on mobile with touch, you can play it with a controller, you can play it with a keyboard and mouse, and all the different hardware configurations. I'm sure you guys are all aware of the challenges of making sure things look great, run great on all the different places that Fortnite can be played. Playtesting is a great way to test those, especially if you don't have the capability to test those things yourself. So when you're asking for playtesters, you can say, hey, do you have this hardware? Do you have a Switch? Do you have a low-end PC? Do you have a high-end PC? Maybe you're developing on not the latest and greatest, and you want to see how your game plays there. So you can, when you're building your pool of playtesters, take note of what they're playing on so you can make sure you get coverage. I was developing a prop hunt. I'm developing a prop hunt. You can come see it at the booth down in front of the Great Hall. And I play generally when I play Fortnite with a controller. And I had a play test where somebody was playing on keyboard and mouse. And during the play test, I really love all the mechanics, the locomotion mechanics in Fortnite. So I had sliding enabled. And the player on keyboard and mouse was disguised as a table and running through the level and hit the slide key, and it locked him in place. They didn't slide. And I learned during that playtest, because I mostly use controller, that the slide key is also the key that locks a disguised prop in place. So I wouldn't have discovered that if I hadn't done that playtest myself. It was a blind spot of mine. So, okay, so you've got everything set up, you scheduled the date, you've lined up your playtesters, the playtest is happening. What should you do? Your main job is to observe and listen, okay? Your players are gonna struggle, they're going to get stuck, they might disparage what you've been working on. It's natural to want to react. It's natural to want to defend what you've done, your hard work. Resist it, right? Like, resist that urge to talk to them about, like, to defend your work and to talk to them about, like, hey, did you think about it this, or I did that this way. You know, listening is a gift. Feedback is a gift, so make sure you're listening to it as they're giving it to you. Let them do the wrong thing. You might learn something about your game because they went the wrong way or did the wrong thing, and then you ask them later, like, hey, what did you do? Maybe that turns into a feature. Maybe that's something you need to fix. That's up to you to decide. You're not going to be there. I think the main thing here is when you're getting feedback and they're doing the wrong thing or they're struggling, like, keep in mind that when you publish the game, you know, the kid in Nebraska who downloads it, you're not going to be sitting next to them to help them. So if somebody's struggling in your playtest, it's likely that somebody else is going to struggle or find a problem or feel the way that that playtester is feeling. So make sure that you're listening to it and you're observing and you're not just muddying the data by just helping them through it, right? Like, get that data, find out what's wrong, what they're thinking, and then fix it. So there's an example I have of where we had a game. It was the very first level of the game. And this game was about vertical climbing. You could grab onto ledges and leap from ledge to ledge. And we had, in this very first level, we were introducing this mechanic. And the player would walk down this alley, and we had a line of VO that was, looks like a dead end. And all of our playtesters immediately heard that line of VO and turned around and walked out of the alley. When our level designer was like, no, you look up, there's a ledge there. Like, you can climb out. Like, it's not a dead end. Well, of course, we told him it was a dead end. So the playtesters were like, hey, I guess I got to go somewhere else. So we had another playtest scheduled the next day. We were able to sneak a tweak in where we put an enemy up on the ledge. So the player walks in. Here's the line of VO. Looks like a dead end. Enemy spawns and starts shooting down at him. And the playtester then immediately pulls out their gun, sees the enemy, shoots them, sees that there's an item that drops from the enemy, and they jump up. So we wouldn't have necessarily found out that players would be confused by an obvious line of VO to not go in that direction without doing the playtest. And we were able to quickly find a way to address that problem and confirm it through consecutive playtests. So also keep in mind that that was an example of a playtest that didn't go well, right? Like, that playtest was terrible. Like, our first time our new users would go in and they didn't complete the level. Our theory was that they would overcome that. They didn't. That was a failed playtest, but it was great that we discovered that in a playtest and not after we shipped the game, right? So failure is a great thing. Be happy when you find those things so that you can solve them before they go out to millions of players. Okay, so asking questions. When you're gonna have times when you're going to need to engage. Like maybe a player gets stuck, like with the alley situation. We actually had to, at one point in that playtest, go, okay. Here's what you need to do. Like maybe try looking in the alley again, right? You're going to need to engage so that you can continue to get data about other parts of your playtest. You want to avoid interfering with what you're seeing your players doing as much as possible, but sometimes they ask for help. Sometimes they give you an emotional statement that, like, I hate this thing, or I wish you guys would do this differently or better, that you feel you may need to respond to. Or maybe they just have a strong facial expression or body language. Maybe they give up. Maybe they put the controller down and go, I don't know what to do. But you can still get valuable information out of them. Your job is to find the intent of all of this feedback. So it's about asking questions, right? If they say, I hate something, ask them why. If they put their controller down or they look their body language, ask them like what they're thinking, right? Like it's all about asking questions. So I was working on a game. We had a bunch of early weapons. And one of those weapons was a machine gun. And one of the VPs of the company I was working for came up to me and was like, I hate the machine gun, man. You have to increase the damage. And I was thinking, I had just looked at the spreadsheet, and I was like, the damage is like roughly in line with the other starting weapons. If I increase it the way you're telling me, that might be the only gun people want to use. Like, I don't think that's necessarily a good thing to do. So I asked him, like, well, why do you think we need to increase the damage? He goes, the gun it feels so weak. Like, I'm hitting with it. Like, I don't know. Like, it just feels awful. I hate it. It feels weak, is what I took away. That was the intention. He didn't feel that the machine gun felt strong enough. So I went to my VFX artist, and I said, hey, man, I got some feedback that the gun feels weak. I looked at the numbers. They look good. And I'm worried about, over-tuning it. So can you, like, amp up the VFX by, like, double? And the VFX artist was like, sure, okay, cool. Next play test, this VP came up to me and was like, man, that machine gun feels so much better. It's way stronger. I think you went too far with it. It's way stronger than any of the other guns in the game. I didn't change the damage. I didn't actually physically make it stronger at all. I made it feel stronger, right? So your job isn't necessarily to do exactly what your playtesters are telling you. It's to find out what they're feeling about your game so you can address that. Okay, so some sample questions about that, like, these are going to be common scenarios that you're going to go through. Where do I go? Maybe they get lost. They don't know what to do. Maybe they forgot. You're not going to say, hey, go to the right. That's a last resort thing you would want to do, just to keep the playtest moving. Instead, say, where do you think you should go? Maybe they go, I don't know. You can say, hey, do you remember? Ask more questions. Like, give them the smallest nudge. Do you remember what that NPC said to you? And if they say no, maybe the NPC was too long ago. You placed it, and they had to remember it too long. Maybe they needed a hint earlier or closer to where they needed to use that information. Maybe the NPC wasn't clear enough in its description, but you'll learn, like, hey, okay, playtesters aren't getting the prompts that I'm giving them. Maybe I need to be stronger with them. You should add more enemies here. Okay? You could say, hey, that's a great idea. I'm going to go ahead and do that. I think that's good. Or you could learn what they're thinking. You could say, what would adding enemies improve? Maybe they're bored. Maybe they just want, like, it's been too long since there's been some action and your pacing is a little off. Maybe it's that they think the enemies are too easy and they want more in this specific encounter. Get the intent. What are they thinking? I hate this gun. Kind of talked about that in the previous slide, right? You could say, well, it's designed that way because I could have, with that VP, totally defended it. No, we don't need to make the gun stronger. It's perfectly great. I looked at the numbers. Or I could ask them, what is it you don't like about that gun? And try to address that. Maybe they just, their body language shifts. They look frustrated. Maybe they start looking bored. You can be encouraging, great. But if you want to learn about your game, ask them what they're thinking. Like that's actually, this last one is one of the most important questions you can be asking during a playtest. What are you thinking right now? Can you talk out loud about what you're going through? You'll learn so much from them about like how they feel about the game, what they think they should do in that moment. Keep that one in your back pocket. So with all these questions, I'll say it again, it's about getting to the intent. What are they thinking? How are they feeling? It's not about what they're telling you to do to your game. Okay, so you're going to get a lot of information during a playtest. Make sure you're taking notes. Summarize the intent. It's fine if you want to write down hated the gun, but that's not going to help you action later. Get that intent. I talked about recording the game session. Make sure, like there was a game I worked on, and it was a flight game. It had a jetpack. And we had the first level where you got the jetpack, and we had a platform we wanted them to land on. So they were flying. All of our players in this playtest would fly towards the platform, exit jetpack mode, and coast underneath the platform. And during the playtest, we could not figure out why is nobody able to land on this platform. And so later that evening, after the playtest was over, I went over the 7 or 8 videos that we had, and I noticed that their targeting reticle was aimed at the platform. And the way our animation worked is we had the crosshair, and the player was always just below the crosshair. So when they exited flight mode, the player's character would convert into a foot mode from flight, and they would fly under the platform. So I asked the engineer, hey, before the next playtest, can we add just like a little bit of upward velocity after they exit flight mode so that instead of the animation going like this, it goes like that. And we made that change. The next playtest, everybody was able to land on the platform. I was not able to find out what the solution should be from watching the playtest. That was something that I needed the videos for, to go back and review and think through and find the pattern. So videos are great for reference. Also mentioned earlier, promo material. Keep that in mind there too. So take notes, summarize, and save your video. Okay, so you've held the playtest. You've taken a ton of notes. What do you do now? A great thing to do is to perform a survey right away. Get that feedback while it's fresh. Surveys are really great because they remove the emotional element from what the playtester just experienced. There's been playtests that I've been in where the playtester was energetic, he was excited, he looked like he was having a blast. And then in the survey, he was like, nah, this game sucks. I've been in playtests where the playtester was taking his job so seriously, it looked like he was at the dentist. He was like trying to be the most impartial playtester ever. And at the end, like I was convinced this guy hated it because you're looking at him and he's just like. But the playtest data at the end was he actually had a great time, thought the game was great, couldn't wait for it to come out. So the survey can help you really take away some of those observations of maybe their personality quirks and stuff and get to the raw data of how they feel about your game. Surveys are also great to form a baseline between playtests. If you have a simple survey, you can compare how did they feel about this part of the game when I did playtest 1 versus playtest 3, and if we're trending in the right direction. Or if things got worse, then we need to reconsider some of the changes we made. When you're doing a survey, make sure you're not leading the witness. So don't encourage a desired answer. Like a question like, Like, how much did you like this boss encounter? Isn't a great question, because maybe they didn't like it, but you're encouraging them to even tell you they liked it a little bit, right? Instead, ask them, how did you feel about that boss encounter? You'll get a lot more information from them that way. Don't ask speculative questions, because you really want them to just give you feedback about what they're experiencing, not what they think they would experience. So if you say, hey, if you liked this weapon in the game, how would you feel about a weapon that worked this other way? They might have a completely different vision in their head about what that weapon would be than what you would implement. So make sure you're just asking them about what they experienced. Avoid yes and no questions. Say, hey, did you like this level? If they say no, what do you do with that? What do you do? I don't know. They didn't like it. Okay. Instead, you can use a rating, which is rate how much how you felt about this level, right? 1 being, I didn't like it at all. 5 being, I liked it a lot. But still, if they gave it a 3, what does that mean, right? So always follow up a rating question with why did you rate things that way. Now, the rating is valuable for, like I said, future playtests. So if you make changes to the level, you can ask that question again and see if that number is going up or down, right? So never separate those, though, like why with the rating. It's important to keep those together. Yeah, so when you're thinking about surveys, they're there to help you track trends. They're there to help you like cut out the emotional elements. So it's a good idea to do those. Okay, so you've got your list, you've got feedback from the survey, you've got feedback, your observations, and the intention from the playtest itself. Now it's about prioritization. What did you see during the playtest that is going to impact the quality of your game the most for your next playtest? Okay, you're gonna wanna think about that. Like, maybe there were trends that you need to go prove or disprove. Maybe all the playtesters gave this feedback about this part of your level, or the boss encounter, or the mechanic, or whatever. You go try them out, right? Like, prioritize what would improve your game the most. Talk over the data with your team. Maybe some of your team members couldn't be in it. Talk over the data, share the data. If your team was all in the playtest together, you might have different insights into what you saw in the playtest. Get together, combine, come together on what the plan for the next playtest is going to be. Don't overreact to your playtest. So I had there was a game I was working on that had loot, and the loot system wasn't in yet. So what I did was I built every piece of loot, and so I had like 300 weapons and pieces of equipment that was in everybody's inventory. And so each playtest, some playtester would go in and find the inventory and give feedback that they were completely overwhelmed by the loot system, that there were way too many choices, right? Of course, a brand new playtester is going to feel overwhelmed by 300 choices when they're outfitting their character for their very first battle. So I was starting to get a lot of pressure from the team. Hey, the loot system isn't working out. Total valid feedback. I agree. Like, that wasn't a good experience. But I knew the loot system was coming in. So the day the engineer checked in the loot, I went in and wiped everybody's inventories. And they just had, the 2 or 3 starting pieces of gear that I wanted new players to have. And the very next playtest, we were able to, test that. And all the data was like, yeah, okay, this isn't overwhelming anymore. There was actually a moment during development where the team was really starting to put pressure that I needed to rethink the loot system, but I knew that I didn't need to overreact to that because we had a feature that was coming. So keep that in mind, as you might get feedback on things that are incomplete, or you're not even trying to play test. You don't need to overreact to those things until you're ready to play test them. Okay, so you've got your prioritized list. Make sure you're iterating. Experimentation is the essence of game development. You're gonna find in playtest unexpected things. People are gonna give you feedback you didn't anticipate. They're gonna give you ideas you might not have anticipated. Don't be afraid to try them. Like I mentioned earlier with VFX tuning, you don't wanna make imperceptible changes between playtest sessions. Double or halve values so that you can actually see whether you're trending in the right direction or not. If you overdo it, it's fine. But like if you take a fiend and you are told like, hey, fiends are too easy, and you just tweak them by 10%, your next playtest, it's gonna be really hard to know if that made it better or not. If you double their health, you'll know if you went too far, and then you can start scaling it back from there because you now know the window that you need to tune it in. As I said earlier, failure is legitimate. Make sure that it's okay if you're testing something you don't think is gonna work. There was a space dogfighting game I was working on, I mentioned earlier, and I was getting a ton of feedback that our flight physics was very arcadey, and it didn't feel like space at all, but it was a space game. And so I was getting a lot of suggestions that players wanted to be able to come to a complete stop. And I was worried, again, that this was gonna diminish from the dogfighting aspect of the game, that people would just like fly at each other, stop, shoot, and then fly away, and they wouldn't be trying to outmaneuver each other. But the feedback was overwhelming. The team was like, we gotta do something, like people aren't feeling like this is space at all. So we did the playtest. I didn't expect it to go well. And turns out I was mostly right that people would fly at each other. The first person to spot the other person would come to a stop because, hey, it turns out it's way easier to hit a moving target if you're not also moving. And so they'd come to a complete stop. They would shoot at the other guy. That guy would try to come to a complete stop. They'd go boop, 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 and then they would all fly away. The one who didn't get destroyed would fly away and try to repeat the process. Definitely, clearly not what we wanted. We wanted a lot of maneuverability and weaving and dodging. And so the playtest didn't go well, but the thing I learned was that people really liked to rotate. And so we decided, hey, what if we kept their velocity but allowed them to control, they could turn off their engines and rotate around and shoot. And that actually added a ton of depth to the dogfighting because now you go around a corner and you know somebody's coming up behind you, you shut off your engines, you rotate, and now they come around the corner and you're there to blast them while you're floating backwards. Not only did it make it feel like space, but it added a lot of depth to the dogfighting maneuverability. Became a defining feature of our game. So, don't be afraid to try things. This was an example where I wasn't necessarily excited about the playtest, but I needed to prove something, and we actually discovered a defining feature for our game. Playtest changes. So you're gonna make changes and iterate. Make sure you continue to schedule playtests to confirm or deny whether the changes actually made your game better. You're never gonna stop playtesting. So as new features come online, schedule those playtests and evaluate whether they made things better or worse. Okay, to summarize, you're playtesting to find your blind spots. Make sure that you're playtesting early and often. As soon as you have features coming online, you can start getting feedback. You're there to observe. and find the intent from what your playtesters are telling you. And finally, take that intent, iterate on your game, test, and repeat. All right, thank you so much.